My stepson called me a gold digger. My husband said, ignore him. He's just protective. Then I found the bank statements. Over $48,000 was gone. My stepson knew. He was living off my savings while laughing at me, so I took the statements to my lawyer. We were at Thanksgiving dinner with Kenneth's family. I was still new to them, still trying to be polite, still trying not to act like I could feel every judgment in the room. Then Brandon leaned back in his chair, looked straight at me, and said, "So what do I call you now? Stepmom or early retirement plan?" A few people laughed because they were uncomfortable. Someone looked down at their plate. Kenneth squeezed my knee under the table and said, "Come on, Brandon. Don't start." That was it. Not, "Apologize to my wife." Not, "Don't speak to her like that." Just don't start, like Brandon had made an annoying joke instead of humiliating me in front of everyone. I smiled because I didn't want to ruin the holiday. I told myself Brandon was protective of his dad. I told myself he would calm down once he understood I wasn't there to take anything. He didn't. For years, Brandon treated me like I had married Kenneth for money, even though I had my own life before him. I had savings. I sold my condo to help buy our house. Brandon ignored all of that. If Kenneth bought me flowers, Brandon would say, "Careful, Dad. She's upgrading the package." If we took a weekend trip, he would ask if I picked the place or just the price tag. When Kenneth and I bought the house, Brandon pulled me aside in the kitchen during a family dinner and said, "You're not as subtle as you think." I stared at him because I honestly didn't know what to say. "What does that mean?" I asked. He gave me this little smile. "You know what it means." I told Kenneth about it that night after everyone left. He looked tired before I even finished. "He's going through a lot," Kenneth said. "He's a grown man," I said. "He knows what he's doing." Kenneth rubbed his face and promised he would talk to him. But talking never changed anything. Brandon would behave for a few weeks, then start again. The insults were never loud enough to look abusive from the outside. They were just sharp enough to make me feel unwelcome in my own marriage. The hardest part was not even Brandon. It was Kenneth treating Brandon's disrespect like bad weather. Unpleasant, but unavoidable. Something we just had to wait out. So I tried harder. I invited Brandon and his wife, Ashley, for dinners. I remembered birthdays. When their son, Mason, was born, I bought baby clothes and a stroller because Kenneth said they were struggling. I didn't expect Brandon to love me. I just thought basic kindness might eventually make him stop treating me like a threat. It didn't. He accepted every invitation, every gift, every favor, and still made me feel like a thief. At Mason's birthday dinner, I spent half the day cooking because Ashley said takeout was too expensive. After dinner, Brandon watched Kenneth carry the cake to the table and said, "Careful, Dad. If she's this nice, she's probably adding it to the invoice." Everyone froze. Ashley gave a weak laugh. Kenneth gave Brandon the same tired look he always gave him. I laughed too, but only because if I didn't, I was afraid I would finally say what I thought. After they left, I told Kenneth I was tired of being the family joke. He said, "I know." I waited for more. Nothing came. That was our pattern. I would hurt. Kenneth would agree it was wrong. Then nothing changed. At the same time, Brandon and Ashley always seemed to be in financial trouble. At first, it sounded normal. Their car needed repairs. Mason had medical bills. Ashley's hours got cut. Brandon's work slowed down. Their mortgage was late. Something in the house broke. There was always a crisis. And Kenneth always helped. At first, I didn't mind. Brandon was his son. Mason was his grandson. Life gets expensive and families help each other. If Kenneth told me Brandon needed a few $100s, I usually said okay. Sometimes I even suggested we help before Kenneth asked. But the help grew. 500 became 1,200. 1,200 became 3,000. Then Kenneth told me he had helped cover part of Brandon's mortgage because they were close to falling behind. "How much?" I asked. Kenneth hesitated. 2 months. 2 full mortgage payments? He nodded. I wanted to be supportive, but something in me tightened. "We need to talk before money like that leaves our account," I said. "I know," he said. "I'm sorry." He was desperate. That became the excuse for everything. Brandon was desperate, so Kenneth had to help. Ashley was overwhelmed, so Kenneth had to step in. Mason might be affected, so Kenneth had no choice. But somehow, I was never allowed to be desperate for honesty. A few years into our marriage, I noticed the savings account was lower than it should have been. Not empty. Not dramatic. Just wrong. I knew our regular bills. I knew what came in, what went out, and what should have stayed. Kenneth used to joke that I could spot a missing dollar from across the room. I was not trying to police him. I paid attention because someone had to. At first, I thought I had missed something. A tax payment. A repair bill. An annual fee. I asked Kenneth about it one morning while he was making coffee. Did we move money out of savings this month? He didn't look at me right away. Yeah, he said. I paid down the credit card. That sounded reasonable, so I let it go. Then more money disappeared. The next time, he said it was for insurance. After that, taxes. Then a house repair deposit he claimed he forgot to mention. Individually, every answer sounded possible. Together, they didn't make sense. One Saturday, while Kenneth was out, I sat down in the home office and opened our joint bank records. These were not his private accounts. My name was on them. I had every right to look. Still, my hands shook. Part of me wanted to be wrong. I wanted to find a boring explanation and feel guilty for doubting him. Instead, I found the transfers. They were not random emergencies. They were regular payments. Some were small enough to hide under normal spending. 800 here. 1,200 there. Then larger transfers started showing up. 3,000. 4,000. One for 6,000 that made me sit back and stare at the screen. The payments went back years. Some went directly to Brandon. Some went to Ashley. Some were labeled as loans. Others had no notes at all. I printed everything because paper made it real. Paper made it something Kenneth couldn't soften with a tired face and an apology. By the time I finished, the pattern was clear. Over $48,000 had left our savings and gone to Brandon's household. $48,000. Money I helped save. Money that was supposed to protect our future. Money I believed was sitting there for our emergencies. I sat in that room surrounded by statements, feeling a cold calm settle over me. Because while Brandon had been calling me a gold digger, he had been quietly living off money I helped build. That night, I waited until after dinner. Kenneth knew something was wrong. He kept glancing at me while I washed the dishes. I kept expecting anger to hit, but it didn't. I felt too clear. When we sat in the living room, I placed the printed statements on the coffee table. "What is this?" he asked. "You tell me." He looked at the first page, then the second. His shoulders dropped. That was when I knew he wasn't surprised. He was caught. "How long?" I asked. He didn't answer. "How long have you been sending Brandon money from our savings?" Kenneth put the papers down and covered his face. "I was trying to help him," he said. That sentence broke something in me. "You lied to me. I didn't want you to hate him." I gave a short laugh because it was either that or fall apart. "He has hated me for years, Kenneth." Loudly. "In front of your whole family. And you were worried I would think badly of him." His face twisted, but I didn't comfort him. He told me Brandon and Ashley were drowning. Their mortgage was behind. Mason needed stability. He was ashamed. He kept thinking he could fix it before I noticed. I listened, but all I heard was the truth underneath it. He had protected Brandon from consequences and protected himself from confrontation. I was the only person he had been willing to betray. Then I asked the question I already feared I knew the answer to. Did Brandon know where the money came from? Kenneth went quiet. That silence told me everything. He knew. I asked. Kenneth looked down. He knew we had joint savings. He didn't know every detail. That answer was so weak it almost insulted me more than the transfers. So he knew enough. Kenneth said nothing. I thought about every dinner. Every joke. Every little comment about me taking Kenneth's money. Every time Brandon sat in my home and judged me while my money helped keep his life together. Did he ever ask if I was okay with it? I asked. Kenneth whispered no. Of course he didn't. In Brandon's mind, I was not a person. I was an obstacle attached to an account. Kenneth reached for my hand, but I pulled away. He's my son, he said. And I'm your wife. For the first time, saying it out loud made me realize how uneven our marriage had become. I was expected to understand Kenneth's guilt, Brandon's problems, Ashley's stress, Mason's needs, and every complicated family wound that existed before me. No one was expected to understand my humiliation. Not my trust. Not my contributions. Not what it felt like to be insulted by a man secretly benefiting from my money. Kenneth cried. I cried too, but not in the way he wanted. He cried like a man afraid of losing his marriage. I cried like a woman realizing she had already lost the marriage she thought she had. He promised to stop sending money. He promised to tell Brandon no. He promised we could rebuild. But the problem was not one transfer. It was not even $48,000. It was the arrangement. Brandon got the money. Kenneth got to feel like a savior. I got the insults, the lies, and the missing savings. The next morning, I changed where my paycheck went. I moved it into an account only I controlled. I copied every statement I could find. I made a simple record of the transfers and matched them against Kenneth's excuses. Then I called a lawyer. I didn't file that day. I didn't make threats. I needed someone outside that house to tell me what was real. The lawyer looked through the papers and asked if I had known about the transfers. I said no. She asked if I had agreed to them. I said no. Then she told me they mattered. I remember staring at the edge of her desk, feeling both relieved and sick. Relieved because I was not crazy. Sick because the problem was now real enough to have legal language attached to it. Kenneth found out 2 days later. Please don't do this, he said. Do what? Turn it into a war. That made me angrier than his tears had. You turned our marriage into a secret bank account, I said. I'm asking what my rights are. He looked wounded, but I was done treating his guilt like it mattered more than my reality. That evening, Brandon called me. I knew Kenneth had told him. I almost didn't answer, but part of me wanted to hear what he would say now that I knew. He did not apologize. Are you seriously going to blow up the family over money? He asked. There it was again. Money. Like I was the greedy one. I know about the transfers, I said. He went quiet for a second. Then he said, Dad wanted to help us. That's between me and him. No, I said. Money from a joint account makes it between all three of us. He scoffed. You married my dad. You knew he had responsibilities. That word made my stomach turn. Responsibilities. Apparently, I was responsible for helping save his house. I was responsible for accepting his disrespect. I was responsible for staying quiet because Mason was involved and family was complicated. But Brandon was not responsible for treating me like a human being. I'm done paying for people who insult me, I said. His voice sharpened. You're going to make my kid lose his home because you're bitter? I closed my eyes. That was the hook they knew would hurt me. Mason. A child who had done nothing wrong. A little boy who smiled at me when I gave him snacks and showed me toy trucks like I was safe. Your child is not responsible for your choices, I said. And I'm not responsible for covering them. Then I hung up. After that, the family pressure started. Ashley sent me a picture of Mason asleep on their couch with a message underneath. Please don't punish him. He loves his home. I stared at it until my eyes burned. For a moment, I almost replied. I almost explained that I had helped buy the stroller, the birthday gifts, and groceries during their hard months. I almost asked if she knew Brandon mocked me while taking money from an account I helped fill. But I knew no answer would make it hurt less. So I didn't reply. Then Kenneth's sister, Nancy, called. She said Kenneth was broken. Brandon was scared. Ashley was crying. Everyone had made mistakes. I asked if she knew about the transfers. She paused. That pause told me enough. I knew Kenneth helped sometimes, she said. Sometimes. They have a child, Laura. So do I stop being a person because I don't? She went quiet. That silence hurt more than I expected. I never had children. Not because I hated them. Life just happened that way. Some choices were mine, some weren't, and I had made peace with it in private. But Kenneth's family knew exactly where to press when they wanted me to feel small. A week later, Nancy said I was punishing a young family because I never built one of my own. I hung up before she finished. That night, I sat on the bathroom floor and cried harder than I had during the confrontation with Kenneth. Not because I thought Nancy was right, but because I had spent years trying to prove I wasn't the cold woman they imagined. I cooked, hosted, gave gifts, smiled through insults, swallowed things that should have been confronted. None of it mattered. The moment I stopped being useful, I became exactly what they had always accused me of being. That made the divorce clearer. Not easy, just clearer. Kenneth and I separated about a month after I found the statements. He still wanted to fix things at first. He sent messages saying he loved me, saying he was sorry, saying he had been trapped between his son and his marriage. But I had stopped believing love meant anything without honesty behind it. During the divorce, the transfers became part of the financial discussion. Kenneth begged me not to include them because it would embarrass Brandon and Ashley. They were marital funds, I said. You know why I did it, he said. And now everyone knows why I'm leaving. That was one of the only times I saw him get truly angry. He said I was being vindictive. I told him vindictive would have been exposing Brandon publicly. Vindictive would have been sending screenshots to every relative who laughed at his jokes. Vindictive would have been telling Ashley every ugly thing her husband said about me while he accepted help from money I earned. I didn't do that. I gave the records to my lawyer because they belonged in the divorce. Still, guilt followed me everywhere. I would be in the grocery store and suddenly wonder if Mason had to change schools. I would be brushing my teeth and picture Ashley packing boxes. I would lie awake asking myself if I had become cruel without noticing. That was the worst part. When people accuse you of being selfish for long enough, you start checking every boundary for cruelty. Then I would remember Brandon's voice. Early retirement plan. You're not as subtle as you think. You knew he had responsibilities. I would remember Kenneth looking down instead of defending me. I would remember the bank statements spread across the desk. I would remember that $48,000 did not disappear by accident. Accountability feels like cruelty to people who benefited from your silence. The settlement did not give me everything back. That is not how life works. But the hidden transfers affected the final numbers. Kenneth had to account for money he moved without my knowledge, and I walked away with enough to start over without feeling completely robbed. I sold my share of the house and moved into a smaller place. It was nothing fancy. The kitchen cabinet stuck when it rained, and the living room barely fit my old couch. But every bill was mine. Every dollar was real. No secret emergencies. No missing savings. No grown man sneering at me over dinner while his hand was in my pocket. A few months after the divorce, I heard through Nancy that Brandon and Ashley had sold their house and moved into a rental. She told me like it was a curse. I hope you're happy, she said. I wasn't happy. That is what they never understood. I did not sign the divorce papers with a smile. I did not celebrate when I heard Brandon had to downsize. I did not feel powerful knowing Mason had to leave the only home he remembered. I felt tired. I felt embarrassed that I had begged so hard to be seen as decent by people who only respected me when I stayed quiet. But I also felt free. The first time I checked my bank account after everything was finalized, I cried. Not because there was a huge amount of money sitting there. There wasn't. I cried because the numbers made sense. For the first time in years, I did not have to wonder what story was hiding behind a transfer. I did not have to ask a question and decide whether my husband's answer sounded rehearsed. Kenneth emailed me recently. He said Brandon barely speaks to him now because the money stopped. Ashley blames him for making promises he couldn't keep. He said he finally understands that helping Brandon at my expense was not kindness. It was cowardice. He wrote, "I should have protected you." I stared at that sentence for a long time. Because yes, he should have. He should have protected me at that first Thanksgiving dinner. He should have protected our savings. He should have protected our marriage from becoming a quiet arrangement where everyone benefited except the person being mocked. He asked if I thought I could ever forgive him. Maybe I can. Maybe I already have in the quiet way where I no longer wake up angry every day. But forgiveness does not mean returning to the same burning house because someone finally admits they lit the match. I do not hate Brandon. I think he learned from Kenneth that love means rescue, and rescue means money, and anyone who questions the rescue becomes the enemy. I think he saw me as a threat because I was the first person close enough to notice the pattern. But understanding someone is not the same as excusing them. He called me a gold digger for years while living off money I helped save. He let me sit at the table and be humiliated while he knew the truth. Then when the money stopped, he called me cruel. So I chose myself. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Finally, I took the statements to my lawyer. I protected what was left of my life. I stopped funding people who could not even respect me. And now I keep asking myself the question everyone else seems so sure about. Was I wrong for exposing the transfers in the divorce, knowing my stepson's family lost their house? Or did I finally stop paying for people who only called me family when the money disappeared?